Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to see so many of you here. And as you know, this always feels a very odd one because it is usually Daniel, who is the artistic director of the theatre. So it's very strange to welcome Daniel to his own theatre. But welcome to your own theatre. We're going to chat a little bit as if you're not there, and then there'll be time for some questions. So, Daniel, hello. Hello. So this is a wonderful new musical, a rare beast in that Tim Firth has written the book, the lyrics and the music, and that's quite an unusual thing. Now, you were part of the very beginning of this, back in Sheffield in 2013. So can you just say a little bit about what you loved about the piece in the first place, and just a little bit of sneaky insight into what, if anything, you've changed this time around?
Yes, well, it began with Tim, and someone made an introductions between Tim and I, and we met, and he asked if we could dust out the grand piano in Sheffield so that he could play it. That's not because he's grand, but it's because he just wanted the best possible sound, and then he basically played every part and sang it to me. Which is quite complicated because those of you who've seen it will know that often the dialogue is quite fast and sometimes overlapping. Although there's not much singing at the same time. There's not much simultaneous singing, oddly enough. And the thing I immediately connected with was that I felt like it was a play about my family. And because Tim has somehow managed to pour into it those everyday conversations, rhythms, arguments, things that aren't said actually, and imbued this particular family that we follow with an amazing amount of pathos and poignancy and humour, as he does, I think, in all his work. It's, one of his trademarks. It's also a beautifully crafted piece. I should say that at that point there was only Act 1, right. And we had a reading of Act 1, and Tim then went away and made some tweaks, and also wrote a second act, and then we had another reading where we heard the whole thing. Then he went away and made some more changes, and then there was another reading before there was finally a production. And I guess in terms of the main changes, no spoilers, obviously, but I think if Tim were here now, I think he'd say that this is now physically the production that he always wanted, because there are things that happen in the second half that couldn't happen before because of economic restraints or physical restraints in the space in Sheffield. And of course we have the majority of the cast are new because two of the youngsters in Sheffield have grown up. And sadly, they can't be with us, but we have two amazing youngsters with us for the Chichester production. But two of our original cast members, Claire Burt, who you'll remember as Mrs. Harris last season, and Rachel Lumberg, stay with us. And that has been wonderful too, to have a mixture of the old and the new.
One of the things that appealed to me so much was the idea of a young person entering a competition, essentially, doing that. I was that terrible person here in Chichester growing up, where any competition, describe your family, I entered without my parents' knowledge. It never occurred to me that I should ask permission,
yes.
To say these things. But it's such a beautiful, identifiable way to put a family in a closed environment, because it's artificial being just with your family, so you have to find a good reason of doing it. So that, I think, is why there's this real sense of this could be anybody's family.
Yeah.
So when you first realised it was going to be, a mum and a dad and a granny and an aunt and the family, this sort of thing, did you have a sense of whose voice Tim was going to lead us with, or was it always quite ensemble? Because it's sung through in a way, isn't it? I mean, they sing when they can't say it.
Yes, definitely. I think you're absolutely right to identify that Tim is adamant that this is not a dysfunctional family. It's a family that's fully functioning, and maybe that's part of the problem, is that the marriage, which has been, the parents have been together for 35 years and have got to a point where Tim describes it as them being in tram lines. So they're having parallel lives and parallel lines, but just aren't ever meeting. And that's because life has taken over children. And as we begin the play, there are certain events that are the catalyst for a bit of a storm happening within the family. Again, under the guise of being it all working perfectly well. One is that the eldest son is about to leave home. And so I think for the parents, there's the prospect of an empty nest, which I think is a real thing for people.
No, absolutely. It's an enormous thing because as parents... and
you're left alone.
You're left alone, and also, you have invested your adult self into being a parent, not an adult, as it were.
Exactly.
And then that raison d'etre is gone, and so who are you?
And people, like, they become identified with work. That's something I recognise. People also become identified with being a parent. And so then when the children fly the nest, your identity is called into question. Not necessarily, but it is in this play. But also the other thing is that there is a grandmother. So Steve, the dad's mum, May, played by Sheila Hancock, is starting to unravel. Her mind is starting to unravel. And so she's brought in to live with the family. And as you can imagine, that itself detonates a kind of bomb within the family. And so Nikki, as the 13-year-old, to come back to your question, she has these antennae where she's able to spot these things that are going on around her. And she comes to a point where she thinks, if I don't do something, things might fall apart. And so she sees this competition and enters it, and in fact wins it. And it's to take her family on holiday anywhere in the world. But instead of taking them to somewhere exotic, she decides to take them back to the place where the parents first fell in love, and that's a campsite. But there's also, that's just the plot, really. That's just the narrative. There's also so many other thematic aspects that come up. One of them is, what happens when you've been with someone all your life, and how do you manage that change together over all that time? And how do you allow the other one to change? How do you keep in touch with those things that you fell in love with about each other right at the beginning, even though they might now be things that deeply annoy you about the other person? And so, and I think we've all, to a lesser or certain degree, experienced that. But I think in terms of who Tim is speaking to, I think he's actually speaking to generations within families. And I said this the other day, that one of the reasons why I felt there was unfinished business with the piece was because there was one performance in Sheffield where in Act 1, I saw a mother lean across to her son and say, "That's you." and in Act 2, I saw the son lean back to his mum and say, "And that's you." And I thought, well, if generations can recognise each other and themselves within the piece, then it has something worth reviving and worth looking at again.
One of the questions, I haven't seen the Sheffield production, and I haven't seen this production yet. I wondered if you had a conversation, you and Tim, about the issues around social media, because although Sheffield was 2013, and this is still living memory, actually the difference in young people's experience with that is cataclysmic, isn't it? So did you have a conversation about that?
Lots. And in fact, you'll see that some of the comedy tonight comes between the siblings on their social media interaction with each other. And actually, Paul Arditi, our brilliant sound designer, there's just some laughs just come from the noises that he gives us through the phones. But you're right, while it's not that long ago, actually the world has changed in terms of technology. And Nikki, the 13-year-old, scours the internet for potential holidays. She starts with Euro Disney, but realises that her mum's not going to like that because her mum likes to sit in a hot tub. Yes, actually, with the designer Richard Kent too, we talked about whether that would be an aspect that we would see. We decided against it in the end because actually the piece is in itself formally quite complicated. It's deceptively simple, but actually for the actors they require, again, without sounding elevating them too high, although actually there is no elevating them too high because they're all brilliant. The amount of concentration that it requires from them to do this thing that you've described of going in and out of singing and speaking, and all the overlapping and very rapid family dialogue, it means that there's no let-up for them. And they've worked so hard, I have to say, the cast. at getting us to this place where we were able to have a good first preview, and hopefully we'll have a good, touch wood, second preview tonight.
Yes, and one of the things that is so marked about this is that we've been talking about the themes, and I think we will come back to the amazing set in a moment, but it's actually really funny as well, isn't it? So it's plangent and moving, and people will recognise elements of their own family experiences, but it's also jolly funny.
I hope so. And again, Tim, people did laugh on Saturday, which was great. And it was wonderful for us to have a full house. Yeah. Actually, we're pretty sold out. So it's great that the cast will play 2 full houses here. And that does change things, of course, because, you know all about that. But Tim, I think, again, is able to make you laugh and cry. He does that in Calendar Girls, Neville's
Island. Many of you, did people see Neville's Island here as well? Yeah.
So it's just a talent he has for, I don't know whether he carries a notebook, I've never asked him, but he must do, because the things that he manages to convey from everyday life are just, they're so instantly recognisable, and things that one would never think about writing down. But when you hear them, you just go, oh, God, yes, that my mother does that, or my father acts in the same way. So one of the most moving things, and also one of the funniest things about it, is the relationship between the son and the father. And it's at that difficult age where the son is leaving home, as I said, around 17, and so he's starting to become a proper man, adult man. And of course, these 2 bulls are locking horns. And there's a wonderful way, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a wonderful way how Tim has turned the tables on even how the son talks in Act 1 versus how the father talks in Act 2, where the child becomes the father of the man.
So when, you did it brilliantly last year with Flowers for Mrs. Harris, bringing a show that you'd done in a different space and changing some things and keeping others, and brought it down. So when you, as a director, when there's been something that's gone really well, and of course, Tim, I think, won the UK Theatre Award for Best New Musical, didn't it? So it's been very successful. But you said there's slight unfinished business. Yeah. So when you sit there on that first day of auditions, or however you do it, do you have an idea of, I'd like a slightly different man playing that, or a slightly different woman, or is it, I'm going to do it like I did before and then see what it was that I want to change? How do you go about reviving something?
I think there are things are never perfect. It just doesn't exist in the theatre or in any art, I suppose. And so even on the last night of something, you're always thinking, oh yes, if only we could have done that change there. And so there were structural changes to the writing, which, Tim will talk about very openly, I'm sure, where, we just reordered things. There's a major change that's happened with our orchestration. And that has been a huge amount of work for Caroline Humphreys, our brilliant orchestrator. And before, for example, I'll just give you one hint. There was the band was led mainly by an accordion last time around. And while the accordion's a very flexible and versatile instrument, or in part it's a versatile instrument, we decided in the end that actually it always either sounded French, Irish, or like it was, telling everyone it was an absolute musical comedy, which it is.
Yeah, but it's not an English campsite instrument. I can see that.
No. So actually, what Caroline has done brilliantly, and you'll hear it tonight, and and when you're coming, is that now we have almost a string quartet. We have a string trio, and a harp has replaced the accordion, and so we have violin, which doubles with a viola, a cello, a double bass, a harp, a flute which doubles with or triples with a clarinet and a bass clarinet and some percussion. So it's a band of 7. There are more in the band than on the stage, which doesn't happen often. And that has really changed the sound world of the play. Is that because
it's more gentle, less strident, maybe, or?
Certainly less strident, but it's also done something, I think, to... again, I'm really afraid of making it sound too highfalutin, but because of the classical nature of those instruments and the combination of them, it gives it a kind of classical basis. Not that, it doesn't sound overtly classical, but because it just has those spaces of strings, it just gives the music, I think, it elevates it to a pitch where it really deserves, because Tim is... again, not many people know this. Tim is a really expert composer. He writes great tunes.
Do you think it also, even though it's set very definitely in the present day and there are present day issues that involve families, but there's also a theme of timelessness, that these things have been happening within families for generations. Do you think the music therefore kind of adds that to it?
Oh, that's a lovely way of looking at it. Yes, I guess that's partly what I'm hinting at, which is that there is this classic story.
Yeah, exactly.
The classicness of it about a family, whether it's Tolstoy or, the programme has lots of great quotes. We had lots of fun finding quotes, about families. One of the things that I certainly connected with was stories that one hears from one's parents and one's grandparents. And, because things are passed down through generations. And Nikki has been told lots of stories about how the parents met. And she gets to a place where actually she feels very skeptical about them, in fact cynical about them, until part of her journey is to not only find out that they were true, but actually there's a part of the story that even her parents don't know about, which goes back even further than their generation. And that's something wonderful about how patterns emerge in generations through families. So it's almost like, there's this big nature-nurture debate, but it's almost like our behaviour is somehow enshrined in our DNA.
Yes.
And that's spooky.
Yes, absolutely. And in a way, it must be even more spooky for you when you see Claire Burt reprising her role and also Rachel reprising hers. But now there's a new granny.
Yeah.
That. So how does that change when you've got two really powerful performers who did it before, but then they've got new children and new relatives?
Well, I think it's been great for them, of course, because they get something, new to act with, so they get a different impetus, and people always bring, I always talk about this thing that it's always about the actor and the character and how those two things match. And if you think of it as, one is a puppet and one is a hand, then there's a debate about which is which. Is it the actor putting the character on, or is it the character who's actually moving the actor, which is how I like to think about it. And so it's interesting to see how they morph and adapt to this different impetus that they're getting coming at them from different actors, bringing different things to different parts. And, not better or worse, actually, just new and different. And actually, we know probably a bit more about dementia and about brain science now than we did most certainly 6-7 years ago. So that science is also...
And Sheila Hancock is just the most astonishing actor. And a rare person who can do both the really moving and the hilariously comic.
Indeed, she's supremely talented. I'll share this one. I don't know who it was, but someone was overheard on Saturday after the first preview saying, "How dare they make that 86-year-old climb those stairs on that set?" And you try and stop Sheila from doing it. She's indomitable. She's wonderful. She is 86, and it's it is extraordinary. I hope I'm like that when I'm her age.
The coolness quota of chai has gone up significantly by the arrival of Sheila.
Yes.
One thing about the set, and we're not going to spoil anything for those of you who have not yet seen it, but there is always this challenge, and of course he did. Richard Kent was the designer of Country Girls, but there is always a challenge when you have inside scenes and properly outside scenes that are supposed to be outside. And those of us who saw Neville's Island will remember, by the end, there were a lot of bugs on that set, let me tell you, because of the real grass and all the water. So with something like that, you alluded to it, that there was a bigger space and more resources here than you'd had before. How do you decide whether to go to town on that, whether to go full country, as it were? And, because this is a proper house here. So I assume something's going to happen,
Maybe. Yes. Well, obviously, you still have those parameters that you have to work within. So, the budget is the budget and you have to work within it. Or you have to, go slowly begging to your...
Which is handy if it's
if you're
to you.
the boss.
Yes. Biggest budget of the season.
Except I can't make those decisions on my own, particularly when it's my own show, because one feels very, very responsible. But, what's hard about what you said is not just indoors and outdoors, because actually there are some indoors and outdoor scenes in Act 1, but 90% of Act 2 takes place in a forest.
Yeah.
Yes, it requires a big change, and the first 9 pages of Act 1 require rain.
Oh, yes. But we all saw the Lear. We know about the rain.
That. Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess you always want to try and deliver what the writer has written. And as I said, we were able to deliver it in a different kind of way before, but it's been really wonderful to be able to realise it fully here.
Yeah. And I'm going to be very mean and sneaky, but before I go out for questions about this to the audience, because I've got you here, obviously, and you are the boss, could I just ask very briefly, just for a couple of sentences, you're the director of this play and it's opening the season. You can't get a ticket. There's a lot of, did you get your tickets? And that's fantastic, of course, wonderful. But you also have a huge season that is coming, and Shadowlands is about to start previewing too. So can you just say a tiny bit, for those people who've not heard you talk about this before, about how it is that as an artistic director, you go about the building blocks of giving all of us something that is so varied, with so many different mixtures of new plays, new voices, older plays, reinterpretations. How do you put a season together?
Can I just presage that by saying there are some tickets. We do get some tickets back, so it's worth checking in.
And Laurence Olivier, when people queued for the tickets, he used to go around with champagne. I'm just saying that. Did you know that? When people queued overnight, there's a lovely picture of him going up with the champagne.
I haven't seen an overnight queue yet, but I'll get the champagne
ready.
There's
only about 4 tickets left.
Speaking of Laurence Olivier, he, of course, had this, it wasn't a motto, but a credo, I guess, which was 3 for them and 1 for me. Yes. And so, which I think, I know Jonathan Church lived by, and it's something that I very much hold dear, which is that you want to have a mixture of things that the audience will enjoy, and at the same time introduce them to new kind of voices that you hope they'll enjoy, or that they don't yet know they're going to love. Now that's quite a risky business, because you can't please everyone all of the time, but you try to aim to please most of the people some of the time. And so we're so lucky here that we've got these amazing 2 spaces, and our season now runs from April till November, so we are able to have a proper mixture of musicals, new musicals, classic musicals, new plays, some Shakespeare, and those 20th century revivals and now 21st century revivals. I particularly love the idea of bringing voices that haven't yet been to Chichester. So I'm thinking about the Roy Williams play this season, Sing Your Heart Out for the Lads, which is going to happen in the Spiegel tent. And by the way, the Spiegel tent was a chance for us to, as if 2 spaces weren't enough, we just felt that there were some plays and some experiences that we wanted to offer our audiences that actually we can't even do in the Minerva, because the Minerva's not a studio theatre, it's 310 seats. It's epic in here as well as intimate. That's its great, great strength. But the Spiegel tent is probably going to be around 100 seats. And so the experience there is going to be even much, much more up close and personal, much more intimate. That play happens in a South London pub, and those people who come to see the play will be sat at the bar or in the bar in that pub as the arguments happen around them. So it's always, I guess, another element I love is somehow trying to surprise the audience. And I know that's strange in a year where someone has said, "Why are you doing Oklahoma again?" And the thing is that it's been 10 years since we've done Oklahoma. Someone said, "Why are you doing Macbeth again?" I said, "It's been 13 years since we did it, and we're doing it in a different space." So I think there are some titles that actually it's important that the next generation get to experience them. And actually some people I know have come up to me to say, "Oh, great, because actually I'd love to compare how Deep Blue Sea was in the main house with it being in here." And this is an intimate space. It takes place in a West London flat where there's a real sense of claustrophobia. A character tries to gas herself. Well, in the main house, that takes quite a long time. So I think it's quite nice to have that people can compare, and I quite like that. And many people have said the same to me. So it's always about balance. It's always about variety, an element of surprise, and mixing up that introduction of new voices with those voices that we love. It's great having a David Hare playback on.
And one of the reasons, you're opening the season, but in here, is that also partly that gives you the chance to be the supporter for all the other directors who come in, they work here, and then they leave, don't they? But you and, of course, Cathy Bourne, who will be back full-time next week, and all the other amazing people who work here, they're permanent in a way that the individual play directors aren't they?
They come and go, and they that's part of our care too, is looking after them and giving them a good experience that they will want to return. But you're right, it means that actually for the rest of the year, I'm not directing anything in the season, which means that I can be around to support as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, we all can't wait. It is such a wonderful season, and I think it's also, people forget sometimes with something like Macbeth or whatever it is. It's the same with novels. That normal people don't necessarily read the novel in the week it comes out.
Yeah, right.
They might read it 4 years later. So it's actually that sense of, not everybody got to see Patrick Stewart, I think it was, wasn't it, down here all that time ago. So this is good. Right, we are going to do some questions. Lovely, thank you.
Yes, I'm very intrigued by this because we read so much now and experience the atomizing of families. And it's something that's beginning to be very much lost, I think, from modern technology and everything. So was there a sense of almost nostalgia of being able to put a play together where the family, they may have had arguments and everything else, but they stuck together, and it is a family. And I think that's something hugely missing these days.
So Tim talks very, very sweetly about the fact that the atomizing of families, but also this sense of people thinking if something doesn't work, then we'll move on. And actually what happens to this marriage is that they decide to stick it out, through thick or through thin, or whatever the phrase is. And that takes courage and work and determination and openness and kindness and compassion amidst all the fury and, wanting to act out and hit out. But they decide to stick it together. And I think there's for me, a very, very moving scene in Act 2 where something that hasn't been said is said, finally said and heard. And it needed to be said and needed to be heard. And those things are hard to say when routine, children, things get in the way. It's hard to always make yourself vulnerable like that. So,
lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Gentleman there.
Daniel, this looks like one of the most complex sets I've ever seen on this stage. How long have the actors been able to integrate with the set itself? And are they having any difficulties?
So we came onto the set, first of all, a week ago yesterday. So we've had a whole week on the set, and we had 2 dress rehearsals after our technical period. So we had a dress rehearsal on Friday night and Saturday afternoon before the first preview. So they had 2 goes at it before meeting the public. Yes, there are, again, I don't want to give too much away, so there are some, it can get a bit of an obstacle course for them, and there's definitely a sense that they need to know what I talk about them needing to know what the race course is, where they need to leap over a higher obstacle. But actually, do you know what? Apart from the fact that the stairs are quite steep and there's not much room on that level, and there's almost no room in that level where Scott Folan, who plays Matt, lives, right on the top there. It's actually very easy.
Excellent and very elegantly done. The sidestep of that one. Another question.
I saw it on Saturday night and amazed by the set and the cast and the storyline, but came away thinking, did it need the music at all? Would it work as a play by itself? For all you've said about how good the music was, I came away thinking that actually got in the way to me of the comedy and the storyline?
No, do you know what? That's a really interesting question, because it's a point we talk about a lot. And because it's not the kind of musical where people, there's a scene and then a song, and people are, for example, Claire Burt, who plays Yvonne, has this, she has this moment where there's a fake eulogy where, oh no, I'm going to give that away. Anyway, there's a moment where she talks to God. And in the middle of her song, and it's basically her stream of consciousness, and she sings, okay, God, can we just, oh, I can't even do it, I don't know how she does it. Okay, God, can we just cards out on the deck, we both agree you don't exist, yeah, okay? And so, it's literally her stream of consciousness. And also we start rehearsals with them just speaking. And it's odd how you do need the music. Mm. In the middle of that, Jimmy Nesbitt says, or playing Steve says to her, we're out of tea bags. And it's partly that shift between the everyday and the elevated stream of consciousness that the music provides. It's the tension between those two things that I think makes the music necessary. There are other moments that are slightly more operatic. You've probably seen Matt, the boy, when he's leaving messages for his girlfriend in Act 2, and he thinks he's clearly in Les Mis. So there are lots of different musical idioms within it, and I think sometimes the music brings lots of the comedy, actually.
Thank you. Lady in the front.
I wonder which theatre in Sheffield you were. I was thinking, was it the Lyceum? Because that's a very, very big theatre.
It oddly enough started in the Studio, which is a very, very small theatre.
Right.
Yeah, it did then play the Lyceum the following year. Yeah, but it started in the Studio.
In the Studio, just trying to picture it.
Yes.
So, in terms of new musicals and reviving this here, you've mentioned a bit that you had the couple of dress rehearsals and then only one preview. You've got another preview tonight. Mm. How much changing can a director do or ask of a company when you get in front of an audience and they maybe laugh at things you weren't expecting them to laugh at, or things that you thought were going to be hilarious fall flat? Press night is next Monday. Mm. So how much do you allow yourself to tweak now between, in these shows that you've got?
Well, for example, today the actors came in at 12:30 and we worked solidly between 12:30 and 4:45 making changes. Right. And before that, the team met to discuss the orchestrations, because there's some tweaks that we're making to the orchestration. So we'll do that all of this week. We'll be making changes. We'll be all in the service of clarity, really, in order to make it absolutely crystal clear. Because those of you who have seen it will know that it's in its own way, it can be quite cacophonous, and that's sometimes done on purpose by Tim, because he's conveying that family life. And there are times where I feel like we need to make sure that the audience don't tire too much hourly. Yeah. That there are moments where we sit down and we can pause. But the first 9 minutes, and the first number is 9 minutes long. There's the first scene is one long number. And it has many scenes within it. We're in a car, we're in a supermarket, we're on a New Year's Eve. And so really making it absolutely crystal clear to the audience where we are, what time we're at, what are people's, all that exposition, all that setup has to be crystal clear, so that then the audience can relax.
Yes,
and come with us on the
they feel
journey.
in safe hands.
Yeah. And that, we've got them by the hand and we're taking them gently through it. So that's the work that we will do. We will make, and Tim will make. He's already made some additions to lines. He's already made some cuts that are going in tonight. Wow. So it's a live thing. So do you
sit there with a big old notebook?
Yeah.
Yeah, really. And final question: is it the production that you want now? Yeah.
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 It is. It's. We've had a wonderful process. We've got an amazing sextet of actors and a dedicated team, and the staff team here have worked. It is a very complicated set in its own way. There are moving parts, but there are also there are. I'll say it. There are 12 Goodwood trees on the set, and they took 8 hours to get in because they were so heavy. And so
we're doing Chekhov next year then, are we?
Yes, they'll be going to the store afterwards.
That's all right. Well, look, I'm going to stop and let you go to your actors and let them warm up and all of those things. But I think on behalf of everybody, it's wonderful that we're back at the beginning of your next season, the third season, and everybody is so much looking forward to the variety here. And I know that most of us in this room are up for everything, and it does us good to see things that we've never heard of or thought about, as well as the stuff that feel familiar and lovely. And then I'm afraid the whole of the car park will be full of people going, oh, Oklahoma. So you will be responsible for that. But for ladies and gentlemen, could you just give a huge round of applause for your artistic director, Daniel Evans?